Okay, so there's this thing that's been happening and you've been aware of it. You've been feeling it, but you haven't fully named it yet. You haven't fully let yourself see it clearly. Does that make sense to you? It's like when you know something, but you're not ready to know it. When the truth is right there, but acknowledging it means everything changes. So you keep it slightly blurred, slightly out of focus, just manageable enough to avoid dealing with, that feeling? Um, and what I'm picking up on right now is there's someone in your world, and they've been presenting themselves a certain way, showing up a certain way, saying certain things, but something hasn't been adding up. Have you noticed that? These small inconsistencies, these moments where what they say doesn't quite match what they do, where the story shifts slightly depending on who's listening, where the energy feels off, just slightly off. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar, because I think you've been collecting these moments, these little data points, and individually they seem small, explainable, not worth making a big deal about. But collectively they're forming a pattern you can't unsee once you actually let yourself look at it, you know? And here's what's wild. There's someone else, another person, and they've been seeing it too. They've been noticing the same inconsistencies, the same gaps between what's being said and what's actually true. And they're not buying it anymore. Does that make sense to you? Like this person, they've been watching, they've been listening, they've been putting pieces together, and they've reached a conclusion about the dishonesty, about the performance, about what's really going on underneath all the carefully constructed stories. And that conclusion, it's about to become very obvious. Have you felt that shift? This sense that someone who's been quiet, someone who's been observing, someone who's been giving the benefit of the doubt, they're done doing that. They've seen enough. They know enough. And they're not pretending anymore. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. Because there's this thing that happens when someone finally sees through the facade, when they stop accepting the surface story and start trusting what they've actually observed. It's like a switch flips. And suddenly all those little moments that seemed explainable, they're not explainable anymore. They're evidence, clear evidence of a pattern of dishonesty. You know, and I think what makes this particularly intense is how long this person has been quiet about what they're seeing, how long they've been processing it internally, how long they've been giving chances, making excuses, hoping they're wrong, but they're not wrong, and they know they're not wrong. And now they're done pretending they don't see it. Does that make sense to you? And maybe you're connected to this situation in some way. Maybe you're the one who's been seeing the inconsistencies. Maybe you're the one who's been lied to. Maybe you're the one who's finally ready to trust your perception instead of someone else's explanations. Or maybe you know someone who's in this position, someone who's been too patient, too understanding, too willing to overlook things that shouldn't be overlooked. Either way, there's this energy of truth coming to the surface, of things that have been hidden, getting exposed, of someone who thought they were getting away with dishonesty, suddenly realizing they're not. Have you noticed that? This tension, this awareness that something's about to break open, that someone's about to say what they've been thinking, that the performance is about to be called out. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. Because I think there's a specific type of person who thinks they're smarter than everyone else, who thinks their lies are so well crafted that nobody will see through them, who thinks they can manipulate the narrative and everyone will just accept it. But they underestimate people. They underestimate how much others are actually observing, how much is being noticed even when nothing is being said, you know? And there's often this one person This one person who's been particularly attentive, who's been particularly careful about collecting information before drawing conclusions, who's been particularly strategic about when and how to reveal what they know. And that person, they're ready now. They've seen enough, they've confirmed enough, they know enough. And the person who's been lying, they have no idea what's coming. Does that make sense to you? And what's interesting is how confident liars often are, how much they believe in their own performance, how convinced they are that they're in control of the narrative. But control is an illusion, especially when someone else has been quietly documenting every inconsistency, every contradiction, every moment that didn't add up. Have you experienced that? Being in a situation where someone thought they had you fooled, but you were actually 3 steps ahead of them. You were just waiting, watching, gathering information before making your move. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. And I think what's about to happen is this collision, this moment where the liar's confidence meets the observer's clarity, where the carefully maintained facade meets someone who's completely done with it. And it's going to be shocking for the person who thought they were in control, because they genuinely believed they were getting away with it. They genuinely thought their lies were working, but they weren't. Not even a little bit, you know? And the person who sees through it, they're not emotional about it anymore. They're not confused. They're not second guessing themselves. They've moved past all of that into this space of cold, clear certainty. And that certainty, that's powerful. That's what makes their revelation so undeniable. Does that make sense to you? Because when someone calls you out from a place of emotion, you can dismiss it. You can say they're overreacting, they're being dramatic, they're misunderstanding. But when someone calls you out from a place of calm, documented clarity, there's nowhere to hide, no way to spin it, no explanation that's going to make it okay. Have you noticed that? How truth delivered calmly is so much more devastating than truth delivered emotionally. Because it's not about feelings anymore. It's about facts, about patterns, about undeniable evidence of dishonesty. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. And I think what's mind-blowing for the liar is realizing how much was actually being seen, how many conversations were being remembered, how many inconsistencies were being noted, how many times they thought they got away with something when really someone was just letting them dig the hole deeper, you know? There's a strategy some people use where they don't confront dishonesty immediately. They let it continue. They let the liar think they're succeeding. Because the more someone lies, the more evidence accumulates. The more contradictions pile up. The harder it becomes to deny the pattern. And when confrontation finally comes, it's not about one incident. It's about a comprehensive pattern of behavior that can't be explained away. Does that make sense to you? And maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe someone has been employing that exact strategy. Staying quiet, staying observant, letting the dishonesty reveal itself fully before responding to it. And now they're ready to respond. Have you felt that energy? This sense that someone who's been patient is done being patient. That someone who's been giving chances is done giving chances. That someone who's been quiet is about to speak. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. And I think what makes this particularly powerful is when it's a man who sees through it. When it's someone who's been underestimated. Someone who the liar thought they could manipulate easily. Because there's often this assumption that men don't notice emotional manipulation, that they don't pick up on subtle dishonesty, that they're easier to fool with a good story and the right performance. But that's not true. Not even a little bit, you know? And when a man finally says, I see exactly what you're doing, and I'm not playing along anymore, that hits different. That carries a different weight because it often comes after a long period of observation, patience, and strategic silence. Does that make sense to you? And I think what the liar doesn't realize is how much respect they've lost, how much trust has eroded, how much damage has been done to the relationship, the dynamic, the connection. They think they're maintaining things. They think their lies are working. They think everything's fine, but it's not fine. It hasn't been fine for a while. And the person who sees through it, they've already mentally and emotionally moved on. Have you experienced that? Where you've already processed someone's dishonesty internally. You've already grieved the relationship. You've already accepted who they actually are versus who they pretended to be. And now you're just done. Not angry, not hurt, just done. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. And I think that's the most shocking part for the liar, when they finally get confronted and they expect emotion, expect reaction, expect engagement, and instead they get cold detachment. They get, I know what you are. I know what you've been doing, and I'm not interested in your explanations. That's devastating in a completely different way, you know? Because it means the game is over. The performance doesn't work anymore. The manipulation has lost its power. And for someone who's been relying on lies to maintain control, that's terrifying. Does that make sense to you? And what I'm seeing right now is this moment of reckoning approaching, where truth and dishonesty are about to collide, where someone who's been performing is about to be fully exposed, where someone who's been observing is about to reveal exactly how much they've seen. And it's going to shock people, not just the liar, but everyone around the situation who didn't notice what was happening, who bought the performance, who believed the story. They're going to be like, wait, how did I not see this? How did this person figure it all out when I was completely fooled? Have you noticed that pattern? How some people are just more observant than others, more attuned to inconsistencies, more willing to trust their instincts when something feels off. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. And I think that's what's happening here. Someone has been paying attention at a level that the liar didn't account for, noticing things that weren't meant to be noticed, connecting dots that weren't meant to be connected. And now all of that observation is about to become very, very relevant. And the question is, how is the liar going to respond when they're fully exposed? When there's no way to deny it, no way to spin it, no way to maintain the facade? Are they going to double down? Are they going to deflect? Are they going to try to flip the script and make the observer the problem? Or are they going to finally be honest about what they've been doing? Does that make sense to you? And honestly, most liars don't choose honesty even when they're caught. They choose defense, they choose attack, they choose anything except accountability. But that doesn't work on someone who's already seen through it, someone who's already decided they're done, someone who's already prepared for every manipulation tactic. Have you experienced that? Where you're so clear about what someone is that their attempts to manipulate you just bounce off. You see exactly what they're doing. You're not falling for it. You're not engaging with it. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. And I think that's the position this observer is in right now. They're beyond manipulation, beyond gaslighting, beyond having their perception questioned. They know what they know, and they're standing firm in that knowing, And when someone stands that firm in truth, it forces everyone else to either acknowledge the truth or reveal themselves as complicit in the lies. There's no middle ground, no comfortable space where you can kind of see it but not really deal with it. You have to choose truth or dishonesty, clarity or comfortable delusion. Does that make sense to you? And maybe you're in that choice point right now. Maybe you're being asked to see something clearly that you've been avoiding seeing. Maybe you're being confronted with evidence that someone you trusted has been lying. And you have to decide, are you going to acknowledge what's real? Or are you going to protect the liar because facing the truth is too uncomfortable? Have you noticed that pattern? How people often choose comfort over truth. How they'd rather not know than deal with what knowing requires. Tell me in the comments if this feels familiar. But the observer, the one who's figured it all out, they're not choosing comfort. They're choosing truth, even though it's hard, even though it changes everything. And that choice, that's what gives them power in this situation, you know? And I think what's about to unfold is going to be educational for everyone involved. It's going to show what happens when dishonesty meets someone who refuses to be fooled. When manipulation meets someone who's done being manipulated. And it's not going to be pretty for the liar, because the truth rarely is, but it's going to be necessary, because sometimes the only way forward is through complete exposure of what's been hidden. Does that make sense to you? And maybe you're part of this. Maybe you're the observer. Maybe you're the one who's been lied to. Maybe you're connected to someone who's finally ready to speak truth after a long silence. Or maybe you're just witnessing it, watching as someone you know finally stops accepting